What is going on, Fight Family? I am back with another edition of Rewind. Today, we are very much rewinding the clock as we go back to 1968. And I'm going with one of the most intriguing fighters in boxing history. One of the guys I remember when I was a kid, I was always intrigued by him because, of course, I did not see him fight. Is the great light heavyweight Bob Foster. And the fight that we are going to be looking at from 1968 is when he took on Dick Tiger. And for this fight, Bob Foster became the WBC light heavyweight champion. So for some of you who may not know, let me give you a little rundown on Bob Foster. Bob Foster was a 6'3.5" light heavyweight. He finished his career with a record of 56 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw. Out of those wins, 46 of those came by knockout. The reason for that is because Bob Foster was Tommy Hearns before Tommy Hearns. Bob Foster was a long, lean, skinny fighter who had power, crazy power. You know, it's something about those long, lean fighters who have a lot of power. He did have 8 losses. 6 of those losses came by knockout. And I'll give you a little bit of a rundown about his losses. He did have 8 losses, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that all of his losses all came against heavyweights. Now, you have to remember, Bob Foster turned pro in, March 27th of 1961. Back in those days, there was no such thing as the cruiserweight division. Back in those days, there was light heavyweight, which the limit is 175, which all of you know. And then after that, it was heavyweight, and heavyweight was unlimited even back in those days. So there wasn't that gap division of cruiserweight in between there. I remember George Foreman one time saying something about Bob Foster. He said that he felt that the reason why Bob Foster lost all of those fights at heavyweight was because he was going in there with the intentions of knocking guys out like he did at light heavy. Instead, he ended up being knocked out 6 times. I'll give you a quick little rundown. He fought Doug Jones in 1962. He was TKO'd in the 8th. That was his first loss. His next loss, and I would like to point out that Doug Jones was 182, so he wasn't much bigger. Bob Foster, 174. Let me see. Then his third loss was against Ernie Terrell, who was a 202.5 pound heavyweight. Bob Foster weighed in at 183.25. He lost to Zorro Foley, who was 212.25. Bob Foster came in that fight at 181. He lost to Joe Frazier in 1970. Where he was knocked out in the second round. Joe Frazier was 209, Bob Foster 188. As we see so far, Bob Foster has not been above, he has not even been 190 pounds in any of these fights, but we're going to keep going. He lost to Muhammad Ali in 1972. He was KO'd in the 8th. Muhammad Ali was 221.25, Bob Foster 180. So he was outweighed by 41 pounds in that fight. Towards the end of his career, he fought, let me see, was this a heavyweight fight? I actually don't know, so I'm going to skip that one. I don't know what that fight was, but I do know when he fought Bob Hazelton, he was KO'd in the 2nd round. Hazelton was 222 pounds, Bob Foster 183, and actually that was the last fight of his career. Now, what's interesting about that is that and I may actually do a video on his second fight against Bob Hazelton, because they actually fought each other in 1977 of September of that year. Hazelton came in at 215, Foster at 186, and Foster actually won that fight by TKO in the 10th. But then they fought a year later. This would be Bob Foster's last fight, and he was KO'd in the 2nd round. And that I might actually have to do a rewind on that one, because I've never seen that fight, but just reading it looks very interesting. It looked like it was fireworks from the jump. But today we are looking at his fight against Dick Tiger. And as I mentioned, this was 1968. Bob Foster was 26 years old. This fight was May 24th of 1968 to be exact. Bob Foster was 26 years old, just entering his prime. And he was fighting a long in the tooth Dick Tiger, who was 38 years and 9 months. So he was just 3 months short of his 39th birthday. So let me start with my pros and my cons about this fight. Let me start with Bob Foster. The pros would be he had the height advantage. He came out using his jab, and I thought that he used the jab pretty well. He was also up and down with the jab. Not only was he going upstairs on Dick Tiger with that jab, but he was going downstairs. And by the third round, he had his timing down, because I felt like the first 2 rounds, he was trying to get his timing. By the third round, he had his timing down, and I liked the feints. He was feinting early, he was feinting often, and that helped him set up the knockout at the end of this fight. By the way, if I didn't already mention, Bob Foster won this fight by knockout in the 4th round. As for Dick Tiger, I did like the pros would be. I like the fact that, sorry about that, guys. I didn't give you my comments for Bob Foster. I did not like the fact that he was dipping down when he was throwing his shots. He is 6'3.5". Dick Tiger was 5'8", 5'8.5", and Bob Foster kept dipping down almost to his height level to throw his punches. I didn't like the fact that he was also ducking into the punches. Like Bob Foster would duck, but then he would also sometimes come straight up, which was causing him to get hit. As for Dick Tiger, the pros would be he was throwing short shots, and I like that. He was swarming, which is another pro, but he was swarming in and throwing short shots. I'm talking left hooks and right hands, nothing wild. And he also was getting his timing down on Bob Foster. As for the cons for Dick Tiger, body work. He did not do any body work. The body work could have probably got Bob Foster off his rhythm a little bit and maybe had him lower his guard, but he did not do that. And I didn't like the fact that he was standing right in front of Bob Foster. Bob Foster is a dangerous, hard puncher, and Dick Tiger was standing right in front of him. Let's talk about the fight a little bit. As I mentioned, in the first round, Bob Foster came out with the jab and feints. He looked like he was trying to get his timing down on Dick Tiger. Even though Dick Tiger was long in the tooth, he was not going to do anything crazy like rush in. I like the fact that he took his time in that first round. Dick Tiger stood his ground. Bob Foster was circling. Dick Tiger was right there for him. But as I mentioned, Dick Tiger should have been on his feet more. He was very flat-footed. By the third round, Bob Foster was really starting to warm up. He was getting his timing down. That jab was finding home, especially the jab he was throwing upstairs. Dick Tiger was catching him with some good shots because, as I mentioned, Bob Foster was not only dipping down when he was trying to hit Dick Tiger, but when he would come out of his dip, he would literally dip straight up. Instead of kind of going at an angle, he would stand straight up, and Dick Tiger did catch him with some good shots. Good left hooks and good right hands. Now, I don't think he hurt Bob Foster at all anywhere in this fight, but still Dick Tiger was catching Bob Foster with some shots. Then we get to the 4th round. Bob Foster is starting to speed it up. He's starting to connect. And then Dick Tiger made the mistake, as I mentioned earlier, of standing in front of Bob Foster. And what happened in the sequence of the knockdown and the knockout was Bob Foster threw a right hand that it kind of grazed him, but it did connect on Tiger. Then he threw a wild left hook, but then he stepped in, he planted his left foot. He threw another, if I remember, he threw another right hand, but then he threw a crushing left hook that landed right on the chin. And the fact that Dick Tiger was flat-footed, the shot did damage. He caught the left hand from Bob Foster, and Bob Foster, I want to say, grazed him with a right hand. Dick Tiger went down. It was very clear by the look on his face that he was hurt. And that was the end of the fight. Bob Foster becomes the WBC light heavyweight champion. Dick Tiger made a mistake of planting his feet like that because basically, without the movement, he was basically a punching bag. So in that 4th round, when Dick Tiger was trying to come forward and he really leaned and walked into that left hand, he planted his feet. So it really was like Bob Foster was hitting a heavy bag. I mean, he unloaded with that left hook, and that was the end of the fight, and Dick Tiger was out of there. So, as I mentioned earlier, going through his record, Bob Foster went on to defend that title, and he went with, let me go back and look. He went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fight win streak after that. He didn't lose again until 1970 when he lost to Joe Frazier. And if you remember that fight, who knows, I might do that one day. I believe he lost that fight to Joe Frazier because he made the same mistake that Dick Tiger made with him. He was trying to stand in front of Joe Frazier and throw hard shots against a bigger man and an established heavyweight. All right, fight fans, if you didn't see that fight, I do have the highlights in this video right here. If not, you should go look it up. It was a very interesting fight. Like I said, this was I want to do this fight, cover this fight because this is the first time that Bob Foster became a champion. Like I said, I was always intrigued by Bob Foster. He was a great light heavyweight champion. He was, in my opinion, an underrated fighter, and he was definitely one of the hardest hitting, if not the hardest hitting light heavyweight of all time. As for Dick Tiger, he had a great career, but at this time when he was fighting Bob Foster, he was long in the tooth. But sometimes young fighters have to fight the old guard to get them out the way and move on and have a good run. All right, let me know what you think about this fight, whether you're looking at the fight that I have in the description. I'm trying to get as much of it in on this video as I can. If not, if you didn't see enough of it, go look it up. You can actually find it, and you can actually find a remastered version of it. That's the one that I looked at right here. Give me your thoughts on the fight, people. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so we can keep talking boxing. That's all I got. Until next time, peace.